What do you believe the panel is looking for in an applicant?
I think that the panel are looking for someone who is genuinely determined to succeed at the bar and who is really determined and motivated to pursue a career at the bar. This is because a career at the bar and obtaining that end result of tenancy can be quite a long, hard, and strenuous path. And so I think the panel are going to want to be sure that they're giving scholarships to people who are really, really determined to succeed and to put in the real graft to be able to get to that end point.
So I think that the first thing to say in terms of this is that the panel definitely aren't looking for the finished product. So you don't need to worry that you're not this well-rehearsed barrister who would get up in court and make a perfect application. They're just looking for potential. So just try it as hard as it is. Just try and be confident. Just try and go in there and sell yourself the best you can. They'll understand that you're nervous. Everybody is nervous. I was absolutely petrified. So they will expect that, and they won't expect your answers to be perfect and just like a barrister would. But as an aspiring barrister, they're expecting you to show some of these traits, or that you know what a barrister should possess, and just that you're working towards trying to perfect those skills, really. So look up skills that a barrister should possess, so integrity, public speaking, things like that, and just try and link experiences that you've had to that. This doesn't have to even be legal. A lot of experiences that you've had in terms of employment and things like that will be useful.
First and foremost, obviously, intellectual ability, both academic wise and also your analytical and evaluative skills. Those are obviously key criteria and things that you will need to have a successful career at the bar. So naturally, any panel is going to look towards those. Secondly, and just as importantly, in my opinion, I think a commitment to the profession. And that was something that really came up and I underlined in my interview a couple of years ago, back in 2018. Just showing your desire and passion, your motivation, if you like, for a career at the bar, and for a desire to push that forwards and do everything you can to make that a reality. That is something I think a panel will hold in huge weight when they consider your scholarship application and indeed your interview. Thirdly, I would say self-belief and confidence is obviously critical. Things such as your ability to set goals and achieve them, because that's what you'll be doing in your future career. Your ability to perhaps work on and improve, to hone the skills that you think are necessary for a successful career at the bar as well. And that all ties in, obviously, to advocacy ability, which is something that they will naturally look for, as well as intellectual ability. I'm not going to dwell on that because I think it speaks for itself, and you simply need to evidence that to the panel, both in your written application and also in your interview. Following on from that, perhaps the fact you are a people person and your interpersonal skills.
What structure did you adapt in answering the questions? I think there are three main things to keep in mind when structuring your question. Firstly, make your point at the outset. Secondly, provide evidence. And finally, be concise. So, for example, your point might be, I am a convincing advocate. And you provide evidence. So, for example, I did a moot, I did a speech, I won an essay prize. And then give the outcome of that. So, I was a finalist, I was a winner, for example, I got some good feedback. And then explain how that relates to the question. So maybe the question is, why do you think you'll be a successful barrister? So you would say, this shows my love of advocacy, and this is one of the reasons why I think I would be a successful barrister. Please make it as easy as possible for them to spot all of your achievements and why they're relevant. This is not a time to be modest. Don't subtly mention your achievements in a really long paragraph, thinking that if you make them too obvious, it looks like you're boasting. You need to show off in this application. And I know that it's sometimes it's very tempting, especially for students who aren't from traditional bar backgrounds to want to be modest and to not want to look like we're showing off. But this is the time to show your achievements.
I think regarding standard questions, making use of paragraphs is obviously critical, breaking up your points and making sure you can highlight them effectively in that way, and following perhaps what I'd term a natural structure that both follows the question you're being asked and also answers it appropriately. So consider, I'd say, probably three main things. Firstly, keep it succinct with your standard questions. Say what needs to be said, no more than that. Don't waffle. Secondly, make it flow. So answer your question, read it back, and think to yourself really critically, does that answer flow? Does it make sense? Are my interests and achievements in the correct order? Have I answered the question as the question seems to want me to answer it? And thirdly and finally, on the standard questions, don't repeat yourself. I think a lot of candidates like to really hone in on certain experiences they've had. And that's fine, and that's all well and good if it's a great experience, and naturally you want to talk about that. But I think it is really critical that you don't repeat points that you're making in other answers, or perhaps in that answer itself a little bit further up. Because if you repeat yourself, in my view, you're just wasting words, and the panel will pick up on that. You've only got 200 words for each question, or 250 words, however many it is. It isn't much, so maximize what you have and be really, really precise in what you're saying.
When answering any application question, I always use the STAR approach. That stands for situation, task, application, result. It means that you can answer the questions really coherently, succinctly, and really to the point. And it shows that you're covering the whole aspect of the question. It not only shows what you have done and not only directly answers the question, but also focuses on what the outcome was and what you really learned from the situation at hand.
If you haven't heard of it, the STAR method effectively stands for, hopefully I'm going to get this right, situation, task, action, and then result. So describe your situation, whatever the example was, sum it up nice and quickly so that the panel are aware effectively of what happened. Then state the task, the thing you did or what you had to do, what was required of you effectively in any given situation. Then move on to the actual action that you took and sum that up. Be clear and precise about what you did. What did you undertake in that given situation? What did you do? And then finally, any given result in that example. What happened effectively? And I think if you follow that structure for most example questions, I won't say all because there is a non-exhaustive list there, but I think for most of them, that technique will suit you really well for answering a question on paper because it lends itself to a natural structure for that type of question.
When giving examples in your questions, do you think the panel want to see examples drawn from legal experience, personal experience, or do you not think it matters? I believe the panel are looking for individuals who are well-rounded, who not only have some legal experience on their CV, but have also actively sought out and had experience of non-legal positions and roles, whether that be a simple job during a time at university, or indeed any other role. But I think the point is that they want to see somebody who has a range of skills, and regardless of whether that particular experience is legal or not, there are still, of course, transferable skills that can be brought across in a legal setting.
Both your legal experiences and your personal experiences are very important. So you obviously want to show that you have an interest in the law because that's what you're applying to be a part of. But also don't underestimate experiences that might not initially seem as relevant. I began, before writing my application form, I began by mind mapping pretty much everything I'd done. So everything you put on a CV and more, so all the experiences I had. This included moots and bar society events, but also things like working in a cafe and singing in a school choir. I then looked at the qualities that the inn was looking for in a scholar. So, for example, the academic ability, the drive, the motivation, and the resilience. And I matched them with my experiences. So I used my experiences as evidence for those qualities. And what I realised was that although mooting, for example, something quite traditional, could show my passion for advocacy, my waitressing showed an ability to balance workload with a part-time job, and it showed interpersonal skills that would be really useful when working with clients, especially in the area that I was aiming to go into, which is family law. So please don't underestimate your other experiences. They will be taken into account and they can be used to demonstrate the qualities that the panel are looking for.
So that's quite a tricky question. I think a lot of it depends on legal experiences you have and what other personal experiences. I actually would say that particularly in my interview, I think I lean more towards personal experiences. So obviously, if you've got legal experiences, that's great, and showing that you've done any mini pupilages, any work in solicitors' firms, anything like that is great. But having work experience in retail and just having jobs alongside university and things, the skills you can show from them are just as important at this stage as things that, if in fact actually even not, if not more important than a mini pupillage. So saying that you have worked alongside your studies, you know, having to show time management for that, how you prioritise things. So anything that you have done can literally be linked to a question. You just have to think about what they're asking you and what they want you to be showing, what skills, and any experiences that you have that show those skills are great. So they don't have to be legal, but any legal experiences you've got, I'd say it's a balance. I'd say showing some of your legal experience is definitely important, but it's just as important to show what skills you have as a person and other things that you've done, any volunteering, things like that.
And then the next question is, what do you think the panel saw as your standout characteristic that either got you an interview or got you a scholarship, depending on the inn? So for me, they did interview all applicants, so it's about what got me a scholarship. And I think that my standout characteristics were my work ethic and my ability to argue a point confidently, despite having some quite aggressive interventions from the panel. And also just having some interesting experience. For example, I used to do a bit of political work, and I think that caught their eye a little bit too.
For me, I think there are a number of characteristics that helped me achieve a scholarship, but the standout one being persistence, I think. Coming from a non-traditional background, not having many, if at all, legal connections, I persisted, did well in my law degree, and subsequently got onto the bar course. And I think despite all these challenges, I still did well in gaining all the experiences and skills that I currently have in my CV. And I think that's what helped me really secure a scholarship.
So for me, I think it's one of those hindsight things of why you think you ended up getting the scholarship. But I think it was just a bit of humour. I know it sounds like everyone always says stay away from having any sort of humour in an interview. But having, and I know especially for if you are a middle applicant, you get asked, there's part of the form where you can ask a question for the panel to ask you. And I think make that a fun question. If you keep it legal, I know for a fact that your face probably, it's not going to move and you're going to have the same facial expression. But if you're smiling and then you're happy to answer that question and there's a level of enthusiasm there, I think that really goes a long way. And I think for me, perseverance as well. And I did explain to my panel I had last year and I was rejected. But I still went on, I still did my BPTC part-time and looked to apply again. So I think if you have got that behind you, where you have had a knockback, I think the panel do view that really well as well.
Another interesting question, and something that I read through earlier and thought, what on earth would that have been? I'd like to think it was a combination of perhaps my ability to show, both in my application and my interview, my tenacity and my enthusiasm for a future and hopefully successful career at the bar. And also, hopefully, I'd like to think my work ethic. But I don't think it's just about what your or my or whoever's standout characteristic is. I think it's about how you interview with that characteristic and how you display it to the panel. We all have superb traits, and a lot of us have very different traits and ability. That's what makes us all human, and that's what makes the diversity, I think, at the bar in terms of traits and abilities and skills so diverse. It's because we are all different, and that's great. So I think really you've got to focus on what you're good at, what your characteristics are, and make sure that you use really your persuasive skills, if you like, your advocacy ability to showcase those. You have to showcase you and what you stand for at the end of the day, because that's what's going to get you a scholarship.